Hello, I'm David Mandy, President of O&M Partners. I want to welcome everyone today to the Evergold Corp Town Hall webinar. Evergold trades on the TSX Venture under the symbol EVER, and they also have an OTC listing here in the States. It's EVGUF. For those of you that are new to these broadcasts, our mission at O&M is to bring the managements of public companies and non-deal investors together in real time. The material presented today is already public. We're hoping to bring this information to your attention, provide context, and help you make a better informed investment decision. We want this broadcast to answer all of your questions. Questions will be easily answered by going to the question portal of GoToWebinar or by emailing us. For any questions that remain unanswered, we'll follow up in a timely manner after the call. Now we're going to turn to our host. It's a real pleasure to introduce Kevin Keough. Kevin is the president, the CEO, and the director of Evergold. Kevin, most recently, before this current tenure, he was CEO of GT Gold, which is advancing the important Saddle project, gold's copper project discovered in British Columbia's prolific Golden Triangle. Kevin began his career with the big companies, Anglo American Corp. He also worked with De Beers, and he has more than 35 years of very diverse business experience in this industry. He has the technical background and the international experience, but he also has expertise in project and public company management, finance, capital markets, communications, and business development. So thus, Kevin can do it all, and it's a real pleasure to turn the call over to Kevin.
Well, thank you very much, David, and thank you for all of you for attending today. I understand we have some illustrious personages in the background, Eric Coffin and Ron Shore and some other people I know. I'm looking forward to answering any questions people may have. Certainly things are down to the brass tacks now. Here we are at the end of May, and we're really getting close to the start of our summer program, which we hope will be the one that really opens it up for us and that adds some considerable value to this company beyond the rather airy performance we've had so far as people speculate in the stock in anticipation of what's to come. But the only thing that will really hold us up going forward are discoveries, at least one discovery of merit from what we're planning to do this summer. And we're about to embark on that work. I thought I might step through, for those of you who are not familiar with our story, I know that many of you are, but perhaps just walk you through quickly our PowerPoint and show you the essence of the company. As David indicated, we do trade on the TSXV. But we're a really new company. We only got out the door in October last year, and that followed an initial public offering. We had, prior to that time, been a private company since about late 2015, and we spent about $500,000 on some assets that we had, or at least my partner Charlie Gregg had for a number of years. And I'd convinced him to roll those into a company and take it public. And we developed these targets that we're about to drill this summer for the first time. We developed them as a private company to the point of being drill ready. And that's really the way I like to do it. I would emphasize, for those of you who don't know us, that we are not a producer. We're simply an explorer. But we're at what I like to believe is the really exciting end of the business. We are about to drill, for the first time, some really exceptional targets that we think have a very high likelihood of delivering a discovery of merit. And by that I mean a discovery that could, in the early going, have the wherewithal to potentially develop into a mine. And we should be able to tell that in pretty much our first kick at the can. For those of you who may know the Lassonde curve after Pierre Lassonde of Franco, Nevada, this is a very simplified version of it that I'm showing you here. We're right at the beginning, having launched in October last year. We're hoping to drive value over the course of the next couple of 2 or 3 months, 3-4 months, as we drill for the first time these targets. Typically, you will find yourself with a potential capital gains opportunity running from pennies to several dollars often. Usually it's very volatile. I would argue that those of you who are familiar with the junior end of the business are probably comfortable with the volatility, but it can be tough for people who are not. So just be aware that it's going to be a fast and furious ride, and for every gain we have, we're probably going to give a fair chunk of it back in the next trading session. But if we can deliver a discovery that has the wherewithal to become a mine, ultimately we could end up at much higher prices than where we are presently. I can tell you that in the short run, we probably will end up at considerably higher prices, but expect it to be volatile. We have a really clean little company, but I'm going to skip right ahead to the essence of the story. We have Flagship Properties, all of them located, 2 of them are our flagships, and they're located in northern British Columbia. That's it at the top of the image, Snowball and Golden Line. These properties we developed as a private company. This is Snowball. Snowball is about as dead center to the heart of the Golden Triangle as it's possible to be. This area and this property, this area, the Golden Triangle, is well known for its rich copper, gold, silver bodies, deposits, and mines. There are operating mines here. Our Snowball property is at the heart of this area, and it is not far from a paved highway, so that's something to remember. This is a view of Snowball looking due north. It's a precipitous property, but the backstory on it is that some work was done by Noranda in the early 1990s. Down on the lower flats in the foreground of this image, you can see Snowball Pond down there. They were drilling and they intercepted high grades of gold, silver, and some bulk tonnage intercepts looking for Assay style. We think they may have been a little lazy because when we took this property on, we did some modeling first thing out the door in 2016, and it seemed to us that the anomaly that Noranda had developed down there in the vicinity of Snowball Pond was actually open upslope. So in 2016, we went to the top of this ridge here. You see at the top of the image, that's Snowball Ridge and Pyramid Peak. We sampled along it and up and over Pyramid Peak, and we got some really impressive results in gold in talus fine sampling. An example, top right of the image there is Pyramid Peak, which our initial samples ran over 0.5 gram of gold per ton in talus fines, and that's excluding a very high grade sample as well. That opened our eyes, so we went back in 2017 and we peppered Pyramid Peak here in the top center of the image with samples. And that, as we zoom in progressively to slide 13 here, that gave us these results. There's about 50 odd samples that we took over the whole of the peak, but these 39, 40 of them here run over 0.7 grams of gold per ton in talus fines. So that area, it's about 250 meters across the blue outlined area there. It's a substantial volume of rock. It's essentially a cone-shaped pyramid that appears as you can see it in slide 14. That is a really juicy looking target, and as you can see on slide 14, we have the drill pad set up on top here. We built this last September, and we're ready to go on this pad. The plan is to be in here setting up camp We'll actually operate off the highway with a camp. We have this pad built. We'll put the drill on, and hopefully we're drilling by about the 15th, probably the 20th of June, depending on how long it takes us to set up. But this entire area you're looking at is mineralized, and there are boulders of high-grade material, such as this one on slide 15, that are lying on surface. So this is an intrusion-centered system. It has the potential for high-grade, underground style, and it also has the potential for bulk tonnage, lower grade style. We won't really know till we drill it what we have, but it's a substantial target. And as I mentioned before, Snowball is not far from a highway. So although it's northern BC, it's not remote to highways. That's Highway 37, and we'd come straight up this valley to the foot and Snowball Pond here. If we're lucky enough to develop something significant, that's where the road would come. We have one other pad set up at Snowball. This is called the UT vein pad. This particular pad you see on slide 17 here is 1,000 meters, a kilometer due west of the previous pad on Pyramid Peak. This, we believe, is an outlying vein system. It's up against a diorite plug in the background here. This, we know, carries very high grades of gold and silver. You can see some of the numbers bottom left of the image. All of those reds are gold in grams per ton values. So this is a lovely target, but it just is an example of how far from what we think is the intrusive center this system extends, at least 1,000 meters west. So that's Snowball. It's drill ready. It's going to be drilled shortly. This next property is Golden Line. This is our second flagship. It's also north central BC. There's an interesting point here that I'd like to make. This is actually in the same Stikine terrain rocks as our other property, Snowball. Those of you who may know the Golden Triangle, those rich deposits such as Bruce Jack, Snip, and a number of the other historical operations over that way and current operations, that's hosted in the Stikine terrain, volcanics and intrusives. That belt of rock arches north, continues up through GT Gold, Saddle Discovery, over through Iskut, Red Chris, and then comes down the far side and goes to the southeast. And this Golden Line property is hosted in this portion of the Stikine terrain. It's actually one of the most remote areas of British Columbia, which is an opportunity because it's relatively unexplored. But as you can see from image slide 21, the topography here is in many ways somewhat more moderate than over at Snowball. And that formerly is, that track you see in the image here was previously the track they used to track a bulldozer up onto Golden Line. This is Golden Line. It's a much bigger property than Snowball. On it, we've developed three principal target areas, GL1, 2, and 3, that you can see on slide 22. All three of these areas are important to us in the near term. GL1, bottom left there, is the sector or the area that attracted us first to this property. At GL1, back in the early 80s, Newmont had actually put some holes in here. They drilled a very high grade epithermal gold-silver system. It seems to be hosted in porphyry. They got upwards of 90 meters of 1 gram material with higher grades within it. This attracted us to this area. We picked this property up, or rather Charlie did, back in about 2013. When we took it on, we immediately went north of this area, north of GL1, and we broadened our geochemical sampling north and to areas northeast. And I'll walk you through these other areas, but they're all related. We've now got GL2 and 3 to add to GL1. It's fair to say that GL1, this next image I'll show you, this is the historical GL1 slide 25 here. just a close-up. Point I want to make is that we're not actually going to be drilling this right out the gate. This is not our top priority. Our top priority in the near term is about 1 kilometer due north of GL1. We're calling it the GL1 Northridge. This is a view of the GL1 target area, the historical area down here in the bottom. It's within the area of this red ellipse up here that we've really been focused the last little while in terms of our first drill target for the season. Down here in the historical GL1, it seems to be predominantly silver. Up here in this red ellipse, it seems to be predominantly gold, or at least it's got a lot more gold in it than it does down here. We developed this GL1 Northridge target just last year. This ridge apparently had never been sampled, and we sampled it. We did geochemistry along this ridge top, and those are the results we got. You can see numbers of several thousand grams per ton in soils, and this is true soil. It's not talus fines. You can see the grass on the south-facing slope here. We got up to 15,000 grams per ton gold here, or I'm sorry, 15,000 parts per billion gold, so that's 15 grams per ton gold. And we went back to the office and superimposed that on one of our air photos, and lo and behold, you can see a lot of color bleeding out the north slope of this target. It appears this is a new to science, undrilled, high grade potentially vein zone, and quite a wide one. That's about 500 meters across from dashed line on the left to dashed line on the right. So it's broad, and we think this structure is actually the continuation perhaps of the one that they drilled here to the south. We could be wrong about that, but whatever it is and how it's related exactly, it's exciting, and it's a big target that we will not miss. We basically intend to set up here on the ridge or close by where the arrow, where my icon is here, and drill to the west. And this could get exciting very quickly. This is roughly how we would come at drilling the GL1 Northridge target. So this is just our first kick at the can there. We think that is a really sweet looking target, and we'll be the first to drill it. Nearby, just slightly to the east, we've got this beautiful GL2 target area. It is really interesting and potentially very meaningful to the company because it has 3 different styles of high-grade mineralization in outcrop, none of them ever drilled and apparently not known to science before. We developed these targets ourselves. It combines high-grade skarn, high-grade epithermal style, i.e. vein style, and high-grade, apparently high-grade porphyry style. I'll walk you through that briefly, but this is some of the high-grade skarn material. This is running, as you can see in the bottom of the image here, this is an actual outcrop in a rather substantial area of it. We can put the drill on this, and we'll be drilling right through it from surface. It's running 13.5% copper, quite a lot of silver there, and a nice smattering of gold as well. So this is a sweet looking skarn, similar to the material that Sun Metals has been drilling down at their Stardust property a couple of 100 kilometers to the southwest. The point is there's usually a source, an intrusive engine for this material, and hopefully we're going to find it this summer. Just over the ridge from the previous skarn to the south, we've got outcropping high-grade epithermal. This is some of it. This is quartz carbonate vein material. It's got a lot of gold. You can see 18 grams in the sample, quite a lot of silver too, several thousand grams. This is an outcrop. And not far from this, we've also got outcropping porphyry style. The most exciting porphyry target, though, that we have at GL2 is this new area developed also last year. We call it the East Ridge target. This is within the area of this ellipse here. That's about 250 meters north-south. And you can see the copper, gold, and silver values left to right on slide 32 here. The copper values are running multiple percentages, the gold multiple grams, and the silver for a porphyry is pretty strong as well, 10 or 20 grams per ton. These are sweet grades for a porphyry, and this is an intense quartz stain stockwork with none of the typical epithermal pathfinders. So it's really just got the copper, the gold, and the silver in it, at least as we currently understand it. And this is an outcrop and a substantial zone of outcrop. We believe there's a lot more to this. This is a large target, and we'll be excitedly putting the drills on this as well, starting in early July. This is some of that GL2 porphyry. Doesn't look like much when you walk by it, and people may have missed it in the past, but you whack a chunk off it and it's packed full of chalcopyrite and other juicy looking minerals. We also have the GL3 target area, which is across the valley from GL2. That's GL2 here, GL3, and there's the GL1 historical here. All of this area, all of these showings, we think are related to an intrusive system, whether with one or several intrusive pulses, we don't know. But what I can tell you is the drilling is ready to begin. I do believe we're going to be hitting on several of these targets. The question is what those values will be for us. And I might add that we're developing new targets and have developed new targets recently, just slightly to the north here as well. So this property has got immediate discovery potential. You won't have to wait long for the results. Going forward this summer, the plan here at Golden Line, we're going to be in this, mobbing in around the 15th of June. We start sampling geochemical as well as geophysical work, and also archaeology, environmental work, and then we bring the drills on. But we're going to focus the geophysics initially on our priority GL1 North target here, the EP zone, the skarn, and the East Porphyry. And we'll take it from there. And this, if it unfolds as we foresee it possibly could, we could expect up to 10,000 meters of drilling here this summer if we're successful with our phase one, which is rather small. At the minute, it's really planned for about 2,500 meters. We will scale that up considerably, just as we did at Saddle there, where we started, I think, with the target of, for GT Gold, of about 4,800 meters. We ended up at 18,000 with the discovery. Something similar could unfold here with success, so it could be exciting. Slide 36, this is some of our proposed lines of IP, ground-based IP, and we use the IP to basically identify those areas that are giving us a good chargeability or resistivity response, generally reflecting the amount of silicification or disseminated sulfides in the rock. This is our camp potentially site at Golden Line. And I would just perhaps wrap up here. And I've already discussed roughly what our plans are, roughly 2,400 meters in an initial phase of work at Snowball, roughly the same at Golden Line, scaling both projects up considerably with success. Hard to say what those numbers would be at the current time. It partly depends on the length of the season. But with success, we would expect to be drilling both these properties out until October. You may have noticed that we closed a financing last week, and it was a small financing, but I did want to briefly mention that. You know, we were financed for our phase one work on both properties with the cash we had in hand. but it's been, fair to say, a remarkably unstable period. As I mentioned last week, I thought it was prudent, especially when we were approached by Sprott and by Backer Wealth and by Middlefield, who are really, their managers are really the best in the business. They're very good people. And I thought it would be prudent to raise a limited amount of money just to top up the till ahead of the start of drilling, because none of us can know for certain what markets are going to be like midsummer, and it's likely with success that we're going to need considerably more money. I don't hide that from people. We always hope to do that at higher prices. So our financing last week, I think in the context of current markets, was priced pretty attractively, roughly more than triple our IPO in October last year. And it was a premium to both the 15 and 30-day VWAP. So we're well positioned, and I think strategically that these particular institutions that we brought in, it's important to seed the market in a way that positions people for success if we get it, because they'll be there for us going forward if we need them. The team is comprised of geologists and qualified people, all of us. It's Charlie Gregg down on the bottom of slide 41. All of these properties were rolled into this company by Charlie entirely for stock. There were no staged cash payments. The company owns 100% of them, so it's really clean. Darren here has had a lot of success, or Darwin rather, I should know his name. Darwin has been heading up High Gold since it got out the door from Constantine earlier in the year. Rosie Moore, of course, came out. She did a lot of the work on the ground at Voisey's Bay in the early days. Alex is a geophysicist, and Bernice is a lawyer. So we're all ready to go, and you won't have to wait long. I welcome any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. As always, very well presented. We're going to start today with Heinz Thoma. Heinz, do you have questions for Kevin Keough?
Thanks for the presentation. So with your $3.5 million in the bank, you could do total about 5,000 meters of drilling?
Yes, Heinz. You know, our costs up there, I like to be very conservative, but generally it costs about $430 a meter.
First name, W.
And I want to be sure you understand that's an all-in figure, right? That includes geophysics, geochemistry, camp, a lot of those costs that others don't necessarily cite. The basic costs will average somewhere around about $120 a meter. Snowball will be less expensive per meter, maybe $330, and I might be surprised. Maybe it'll come in less because we're setting up right on the highway there. So we have quite a bit of flexibility, I think. I think the numbers we're using are pretty conservative. But to give you some idea, if we were operating 2 drills like we were at Saddle, we'd spend $1 million a month. That was with Saddle's GT discovery years ago. Our goal with Evergold is much simpler. Our first goal is simply discovery. So we've got 1 drill. We're going to put that drill, we have 2 drills, one on Snowball and the other one over on Golden Line.
Yep.
Both will do a first pass of our key targets. And we're obvious, if we get successful on one or maybe more than one of those targets, we're just going to stay on them and we will expand. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, yeah, you know, we'll need more money if we get successful. We'll probably need a lot more money, but at 70 cents right now, I think we've shown years ago that these stocks will run, and this one will run to several dollars if we have a significant discovery. There's this capital structure is tight. There's a lot of awareness of what we're doing. So it's really, I tell people, your opportunity with us right now is capital gains only, but you're going to have to be fleet of foot. And if you get your gains, take some.
What's the turnaround situation with results? If you find something, how long does it take? How long does it take that you get specifics?
Actually, you know, we'll be excited pretty quickly because we have a new technique we started to use a lot some years ago. Now, we don't publish these results. We use XRF now, right? They developed this nifty little system going back 10 or 15 years, handheld XRF, which is a really good tool for pointing us to the pathfinders. Not so much gold, but it'll tell us if we have the pathfinders associated with gold. And we found it worked really well at Saddle, and we think it's probably going to work well at Golden Line too. So visually, combination of visuals and XRF in the field is going to tell us whether we're really into the goods, and we'll know that right when we're in the field. But we'll obviously have to wait for the lab assays. Depending on, well, in the case of Snowball, we should have our first assays back from that work in July. And depending on when we get going with the drilling at Golden Line, let's say that would be sometime in the first half of August for Golden Line. I'm talking about lab results.
Thank you.
And right now, Kevin, the labs are probably, what is it like, the turnaround? What do you expect this summer? Just going.
David, at the minute, I have not heard that the labs are any more inundated than they typically get each year.
Sure.
I would expect this summer they'd be somewhat less busy, perhaps, given the economic stimulus. Yeah. So I don't see any problems that way.
Right. That's what I figured. We're going to turn to Barry Rancière. Barry, for Kevin. You're unmuted, Barry, if you have a question.
Barry might have to unmute himself, actually.
Okay.
We'll leave him open and come back.
Wonderful. We'll go to Doug Loud.
As always. So I'll ask you a little question and a big question. I think it was the last slide before the end of Snowball where you were showing the little construction site, but you also had in the lower left-hand corner a bunch of drill results. Oh my.
That was Snowball, Doug, right?
Yeah, almost the last slide, if not the last slide. That's it, yeah. In the middle of that green circle there, did these old eyes actually see 45 grams a ton in one of those holes?
Yes.
Almost 2
those weren't holes, actually. Yeah, those are not holes. So this, got to be clear, all of this area we're talking about here at Snowball has never been drilled. So this is all virgin target, right? That's actually outcrop, combination of outcrop and float. So they're actual boulders of this stuff lying around on the surface, right? This is a arsenopyrite rich quartz carbonate vein material with a lot of gold and silver in it. Yeah.
So basically it's almost 2 ounces of gold a ton in New Yorkese.
Yes, that's right. In that,
and since you used the arsenic word, is there deleterious elements?
Oh, you know, those of us in the business rather like arsenic because it's so often found in association with gold, right? You usually find a lot more of it, and it's kind of, we consider it a key pathfinder, which means we go looking for it because it points us. It doesn't mean, sure, you know, if you go eating arsenic, it's not good for you. If you're asking whether it's deleterious from a metallurgy standpoint, well, in some circumstances, it can be, but generally it's not. Usually it's fairly easily addressed in terms of removing it from the production, from the processing. It gets removed during processing, and you're left with a pretty clean output.
If the smelter's willing to have a pile of arsenic nearby, as some are. My bigger question, though, was you have these wonderful sites in Golden Lion and Snowball. Are they in like separate sub corporations so that you could sell one and spin it off, or are they all just openly held in the company?
These are all totally held in the company at the current time, but you know, there'd be nothing, let's say we had terrific success on one or the other or both. If it made sense to spin off one of these into a separate vehicle so that we could raise the resources to properly address it, we'd sure look at that. Nothing is written in stone at this point. I think all of us are really focused on delivering discoveries of merit, and not 2 years out, but this year.
Right.
And we'll see where that gets us.
So you're hopeful of some good drilling results with an announcement of them over the summer.
Yes, and the reason I like to emphasize this, Doug, the reason we're very confident about what we're doing here is, as we were with GT Gold and our saddle discovery, we developed and we like to use geochemistry as our foundational science, if you will, for this work. And the reason is, it shows us that there's actually metal there. Now, it may be metal in soils, and sometimes soils are moved, and maybe metal in talus fines, maybe metal in rock. Well, if it's rock outcrop, you know that's not moved, although boulders can. But generally, if you study the topography and you've got chemistry that indicates there's metal, and the topography you can explain that, or you have a good understanding it's not been moved or moved far, then you can have a lot of confidence setting up to drill a target like that. Way more confidence than just a pretty geophysical image, right? We like
Absolutely.
the two. Yeah, but usually we go for geochemistry first, like we've done at both these properties. And at Snowball, for example, we don't have any geophysics at all. It's kind of hard to do. It's so extreme up there, but we don't need it. We can set up and we're going to drill with geochemistry just as we did at Saddle with GT. And over at Golden Line, pretty similar. Several of those targets, we don't need geophysics to drill because it's an outcrop. We can see it. We know the metal is there. We just need to drill it. But we'll use geophysics to really point us to where things are going, and maybe turn up some other stuff that doesn't show up geochemically. You may recall up at GT, that's exactly what happened. Geochemistry got us the Saddle South discovery, which was a high-grade vein system, which will probably be eventually part of an open pit. But the porphyry discovery up there was entirely blind. There was a hint of geochemistry along strike, and when we did geophysics, this thing turned up that was under a bunch of dead rock. The glaciers had bulldozed dead rock over it. So, but geochemistry is what we like to focus on initially anyway.
That's great. Thank you. It's very, very helpful explanation. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug, for your questions. We're going to turn to Victor Zhao. Victor, question today for Kevin.
Yeah. Do you have any regional MAG data in both properties?
Well, we do, Victor. Actually, now I wouldn't actually call it at Snowball here. We don't have regional. What we did is we actually flew detailed telemag right here over the area we're going to drill. So the core of our Snowball property has been covered with very high resolution aeromag, and that has pointed to, for example, the likelihood of an intrusive body of considerable scale along the Stewheaney-Hazelton contact below Pyramid Peak. So it's basically shown us that we probably have a significant scale of intrusion there, and a lot of it is sitting out there under the glacier. You see in slide 17, we're not actually looking at Pyramid Peak right there, but that glacier on the right is a big glacier, and it's covering a lot of rock. I'll go back to slide 14, and that you can see on the left of the image that glacier. It's melting, but you know, it's still covering a lot of that intrusion. So you might suggest that there's a lot of upside there in terms of the scale of what you're looking at. Over at Golden Line, we have, yes, we flew the property with detailed aeromag, and we have both regional as well as very detailed mag work over the areas we're going to be drilling. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Victor. We're going to turn to Willem Middelkoop. Willem, do you have a question today?
David, I do have a question from Mark Bennett. Mark, are you able to hear us and unmute yourself?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thanks, Kevin, for a great presentation. As an early investor in GT and an early investor in Evergold, those diagrams and photos have got my geological juices flowing, so I'm looking forward to the field season. My question is, how long do you think you can be out there for this season? When do you have to finish up?
Hi, Mark. And yes, Mark was one of our really early shareholders here. So, Mark, we'll be drilling, assuming the weather is like it has been in recent years, out into October. So, at Snowball, I doubt we'd get beyond the first week of October. At Golden Lion, we could easily get out to the 20th of October. But that just depends. I can tell you that we were actually up on the Golden Lion property just a week ago, as we announced in our last press release. We flew over the property, checking just for wildlife. The idea of that was on the 20th. Quite a lot of snow there still, but it's melting. So the idea was to try to just check for wildlife, because we'd like to be able to expand the season in future, maybe start even earlier than this year. And if we can confirm that there's not any wildlife activity, especially caribou, which are out through the winter, then we're good. And in fact, there were no caribou active on our property or any sign of them. So in future years, if we're really successful, maybe we do like we did at Saddle, where we leave the camp in over winter, and then you start up in May and drill right through into November. Because if we have a winterized camp, we can do that. It's just right now we don't.
That's great, Kevin. Thanks. Good luck.
Thanks, Mark.
Oh, great question. Scott, do we have further questions? Does Barry Rancier have anything?
Barry was indicating that he may have a sound issue. So I'm not sure that he'll be able to ask a question. Barry, if you can hear us, you could write that question in.
Yeah, Barry, feel free to write that in. And then Willem, does Willem have a question? Panelist? I guess not. Okay.
I do have two questions that were sent in, and I'll go to those now. First one is, when will you begin drilling on the GL1 Northridge target, and do you have to build out drill pads?
Oh yes, we build drill pads, and but that doesn't take too long once we get down to it. You know, 2 or 3 days, we can usually get a good pad or good robust pad built. We plan to do first get the archaeology work. We have to survey these drill sites first with an archaeologist. That's always a given in BC. Then, of course, we're also doing geochemistry, not on these particular drill targets, but we will be doing geophysics right over these targets. So we want to get that out of the way. At the minute, we're saying we're going to be drilling GEL, the Golden Lion property, after July 20th. That may change. Obviously, we may pull things up if the results, especially of the early IP really encouraging. So we'll do our best to expedite the program and then with success build it as big as possible. But yes, we'll be building pads at all of these drill sites.
Great, thank you. And I noticed that Len Darling had a question. Len, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Okay.
here you, Len.
Kevin, excellent presentation. I've noticed
Thank
since
you.
the big move in gold and silver prices earlier this year that there are a lot of companies sort of like yourselves, maybe not as good, who've come up with plans to raise money. Is there enough money available for all the people who've got good plans and good ideas that have been stored up for years to get to, or is it going to be really competitive to get these dollars?
I think it's going to be harder, much harder this year for a number of these companies. You know, it's, I think one thing I would say is it's not just about your discovery prospect, obviously. That's why we actually set GT up, not GT, but Evergold, pardon me, Evergold up as a brand new company. We did an IPO because a lot of the other companies out there have issues that don't have anything necessarily to do with their immediate discovery prospects. It can be baggage from the past, you know, companies that have been rolled back several times, management that maybe isn't really motivated, just playing at it. Our story is different, not just because of the tenor of the prospects we propose to drill and the fact that we're doing it for the first time and we're going to be doing it now and we have the money, but also because the capital structure of the company is clean. That's why we actually succeeded last year with that IPO. I don't know if you're aware, but there were not many IPOs in the mining space in Canada last year. There were exactly about 18 of them. And 2/3 were on the CSE, and they were for pathetic amounts, you know, a few $100,000 at a pop. They were mainly to seed shell companies or CPCs. Ours was the biggest, and it's not saying much. It was only $3.5 million. It's meaningful to me, and I'm sure to our shareholders, but it wasn't the 10 or 12 million that you could have raised for the same thing maybe a few years ago. However, it's been impressive, the response. So I guess going back, we succeeded to raise a fair amount of cash because we offered a lot. The corporate structure was attractive. We're not asking people to wait around. And it was an IPO which allowed us to sell the stock widely. It wasn't just a private placement to a bunch of high net worth people. To give you an example, with GT, when we got it public, that was a reverse takeover of a shell. There were exactly 56 shareholders came in on that. They were all high net worth, and the stock was really illiquid for the first couple of months after we got out the door. In contrast with Evergold, anybody with $100 could buy stock, and we ended up with 350 new shareholders, and it's traded really well. You know, you can see it. So I guess the entire package is attractive in our case, and that's helped us raise a fair amount of money and bring in the best, like the guys who came in last week, the Dennis De Silva and Craig Porter and Jason Mayer. They're the best in this part of the business, and they know it. And the fact they're in tells you something about the quality of the story we've set up here. Not everybody has that.
Thank you, Kevin. I think you have a very compelling story. The more I hear it, the more I'm impressed with it. So thank you for the presentation.
Well, thanks very much.
Great. And I also have another written in question. Given that there are new to science targets on GL1 Northridge, do you feel that the company has the expertise to properly analyze the results, or will you consider bringing in other experts to help interpret and model results?
We always involve other experts in the work we do. Once we get stuck into a discovery, you know, we bring in people to look at the petrology, the mineralogy, to advise on the statistics, how to more effectively, you know, sample, and how to assess the results especially from the drilling, right? It's complicated. So yes, we I think always act to bring in others we want to. When you're getting out the door like we are right now, of course, it's hard to justify. We're not Newmont or someone where we can throw large amounts of money at this, you know, overweight scientific infrastructure and deploy it on everything we do. I mean, we have to keep it kind of simple in the early going. The goal is to put the drill on that target and drill it, get your core, and then start seeing what you've got. So our first stop is the Assay Labs. We're certainly very capable of evaluating the results we get. We've got a really good, very strong geological staff headed up by Charlie. Charlie is not an insider, but he's our, you know, key strategic, key technical advisor. And Andy heading up our as VP Exploration. We have the whole team. But if this emerges as one or more significant finds, then we are certainly going to have to deploy other experts to help us out, and we'll do that.
Great, thank you. That's the questions that have been written in. Thank you.
Great questions. I appreciate everyone's questions. It really helps bring the story out. So there you have it. Kevin Keough, President, CEO, and Director. I'm going to turn the call back to you, Kevin, for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
Well, thanks very much, David. And again, thanks to everybody for signing in here. I would just say that this is an immediate capital gains opportunity. It's not for the risk intolerant. This is and you must not think that we're going to be generating revenues or anything like that anytime soon. We're not. What I think I have a track record, and Charlie and I in the past, we have a track record for delivering discoveries of merit and for doing what we said we were going to do. And that was true of PC Gold years ago too. I told people at the beginning, I said, listen, we know what this property can generate in terms of results, drill results. And it's going to generate, in the case of PC Gold, which was on the TSX, it's going to generate some really big numbers. That's the nature of what it was historically. In the case of GT Gold, we felt it would generate a discovery because the tenor of that anomaly and its intensity and its consistency was unlike anything we had ever seen before. And I said, you know, given the power of Canadian capital markets, this stock will respond and run to multiple dollars on legitimate discovery results. And they do, they did, and they do, and this one will too, if we pull big numbers from what this work. And it's not every day that we can put the drills on these virgin targets, several of them never drilled, each of which on their own could deliver discoveries that could potentially wake the market up. So it's quite extraordinary that way. There's a lot of depth to what we're offering investors right now. So it's a gamble. I think a pretty good gamble. If we get our big hits, you're going to want to take some profits because it'll be volatile. We'll probably give most of it back, but you know, our goal, our discoveries that could become mines. It wouldn't be us that does that. If we have a discovery of merit, probably at some point we would sell it out. We would never sell a bit. We'd probably want to sell everything, but that's way down the road. Just keep it simple right now. If you're looking for a very nicely positioned, fresh little company with no historical baggage and some very hot drill prospects, we're it. Worth a gamble. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Great presentation. And thanks for boiling it down for our generalists as well. Great call. Take care.
All right, thanks a lot.